I work the night shift at a small distribution center on the edge of town. The building backs up to a thick stretch of woods. During the day, it looks peaceful. At night, it feels like a wall of darkness pressing right up to the loading dock. My job is simple: restock, scan, load, repeat. Most nights are quiet. Just me, the hum of the lights, and the cold air drifting in through the cracks in the dock doors. But for the last 3 weeks, I've had the strangest feeling every time I step outside to check inventory. Like someone is watching me. I keep glancing at the woods, and every night, in the same exact spot, I see a shape standing between the trees, perfectly still, moving, never closer, just watching. The first night I noticed it, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a dark tree trunk, a shadow, maybe even a person passing through the trail behind the building. But then it appeared the next night, and the night after that, always in the same spot, a narrow gap between two tall pines about 30 feet from the edge of the loading dock. I tried using my flashlight on it, but the moment the beam hit the trees, the shape vanished, not like it ran, not like it ducked, just gone. When I turned the flashlight off, the shape returned, same place, same posture, facing me. It didn't feel like a person anymore. It felt like something waiting, watching. And I couldn't understand why it only showed up when the lights were dim, or when my back was turned, or when the quiet of the night felt too heavy to ignore. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever it was, it knew I had noticed it, and it wasn't going anywhere. By the fourth night, I couldn't pretend it wasn't real anymore. I showed up to my shift early just to see if it would already be there. At first, everything looked normal. Empty parking lot, quiet forest, no figure. But the moment I stepped onto the loading dock, there it was, standing exactly where it always stood. I froze. This time, I didn't even blink. I needed to know if it would move. It didn't. Not an inch, not a sway, not even the subtle shift of someone breathing. But I could feel it looking at me, not just in the way paranoia makes you think you're being watched. This felt deliberate, focused, personal. I slowly raised my phone to take a picture. No zoom, no flash, just a straightforward shot. When I lowered the camera and checked the screen, my stomach dropped. The figure didn't appear in the photo. Not even a blur, not even a shadow. Just trees, just darkness, just the gap where it should have been. But when I lifted my eyes from the phone, it was suddenly closer. 5 feet closer, still not moving, still staring, and I realized something I'd been ignoring until now. Whatever lived in those woods wasn't hiding from me. It wanted me to see it. I stepped back so fast I nearly slipped on the concrete. The figure didn't react, didn't follow, didn't shift. But it was closer, much closer than it had any right to be without making a sound. I kept my eyes locked on it while feeling blindly behind me for the door. My fingers finally brushed the handle and I yanked it open. The second I stepped inside, the warehouse lights flickered. Just once, a quick stutter, but enough to make my heart slam against my ribs. I hurried across the floor, trying to steady my breathing. I told myself I'd stay inside until sunrise if I had to. No more checking the woods, no more trying to figure it out. Just survive the night. But as I passed the break room window, it was there, standing outside of the glass, facing me, but farther back now, like it had returned to its spot, exactly where it always stood before moving closer. My hands trembled. I backed away from the window, refusing to turn my back to it. That's when I noticed something on the floor, right in the center of the warehouse, something small, dirty, out of place. I approached slowly, each step heavier than the last. It was a folded piece of paper. I picked it up with 2 fingers, afraid to touch more than I had to. The paper was damp, like it had been in the woods for hours. When I unfolded it, my blood ran ice cold. There were only 4 words, written in jagged, shaky handwriting. You saw me first. I looked back at the break room window. The figure was gone. I spun around, scanning every corner of the warehouse. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Nothing made a sound. But the silence felt wrong, like the building itself was holding its breath. I tightened my grip on the note. The paper was cold, almost unnaturally cold. I forced myself toward the security office, the only room with functioning cameras. If something was moving around out there, I wanted proof, or at least a warning before it got close again. The monitors flickered as I entered. Static rolled through a few screens, but most of them worked. I flipped through the outdoor feeds. The tree line looked normal, still, empty. Then I clicked to camera 7, the one facing the break room window. My stomach dropped. There it was, the figure, standing inches from the glass, perfectly still, perfectly centered, except it wasn't facing the warehouse. It was facing the camera, staring directly into the lens. I leaned closer, squinting at the grainy image. The figure's clothes looked wrong, old, waterlogged, almost rotted. But the face, or what I thought was its face, was blurred, not from the camera, from motion, a rapid, impossible vibration, like it was shaking its head faster than a human neck should allow. Then every monitor went black, all at once. No warning, no flicker, just darkness. In that moment, the temperature in the room dropped so fast, my breath fogged the glass of the nearest screen. And behind me, somewhere deep in the warehouse, something knocked. One single slow knock, echoing through the metal rafters. I didn't want to turn around, but I did. And through the glass window of the security office, I saw a shadow drift across the floor, not walking, not running, sliding. The shadow slid out of sight, dissolving behind a row of shelving racks. I stood frozen, one hand on the desk, the other clutching the note like it could protect me. For a few seconds, all I heard was the hum of the old fluorescent lights. Then even that sound faded. The entire building seemed to sink into a dead, heavy silence. I stepped out of the security office. My boots echoed sharply on the concrete floor, too sharply, like the warehouse had grown bigger somehow. "Hello?" My voice cracked as it left my throat. It didn't bounce back the way it should have. No echo, no return, just swallowed by the dark. The racks stood tall around me, forming narrow aisles. Every one of them looked identical, long, empty, black at the far end. I walked slowly, keeping my back to the wall as much as I could. Whatever I saw on the camera couldn't have just disappeared. Not something that left footprints. Not something that knew my name. As I reached the middle of the warehouse, a cold draft brushed past me. Carried the smell of damp soil, rotting leaves, the forest. That's when I noticed something on the ground. A trail. Dark streaks smeared across the concrete. Wet, mud mixed with something thicker. I crouched down and touched it with my glove. My fingers recoiled instantly. It was freezing. Not cold. Freezing like something pulled straight from deep underground. I followed the trail with my eyes. It led between two tall shelves. And at the end of the aisle, there was a door. A metal service door I'd walked past 100 times. One that hadn't opened in years. Its frame was rusted, paint peeling off in long strips. But tonight, it was open, just barely, an inch. Just wide enough for someone or something to slip through. My heart pounded. That door led outside, directly to the woods, the exact section where the figure always stood. I stepped closer. The air around the door grew colder with each foot I took. The mud trail ended right at the threshold, then continued inside, leading out into the darkness beyond. I reached for the door. My hand trembled. I pushed it open. The hinges didn't creak, they didn't groan, they swung silently, almost effortlessly. Outside, the trees stood motionless. The wind had died completely. The whole forest looked like it was waiting. And then I heard it. A whisper. Close, too close. Not from the woods, not from behind me. From above. I looked up. Pinned to the top of the door frame was another note, held in place by a long, sharp splinter of wood. The note fluttered once in the cold air. I reached up and slowly pulled it free. One sentence, written in the same shaky hand as before. You're late. As I lowered the paper, something stepped into view at the tree line. Not standing still this time, moving towards me. I didn't go back inside the guard shack. I just stood there in the cold dark, staring at the raspy trail of crushed leaves that led into the trees. The woodsman was gone, yes, but the forest felt awake in a way it never had before, like something was shifting behind the bark, like the tree line itself was breathing. My radio crackled suddenly. At first, I jumped so hard I dropped it. When I picked it up, the static had formed a pattern, a strange glitchy rhythm, almost like breathing. Then a man's voice cut through, low, calm, too calm. Stepped back inside, I froze. The voice didn't belong to anyone on staff. It wasn't Kevin or Martin or any of the morning shift operators. It sounded older, tired, and yet focused, like someone who had been waiting a long time to speak. Then, "You're standing in my spot." Every hair on my arms rose. I turned slowly, raising the radio to my ear, heart pounding. But the voice wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was behind me, deep in the trees, right from that exact spot where the woodsman always stood. Step aside. The forest groaned, literally groaned, like wood bending under pressure. And then I heard footsteps. Heavy, wet, slow, walking toward me from the darkness. But they weren't coming in a straight line. They were circling, pacing around me, calculating. And then that same calm, patient voice, now closer, whispered, "Shift's almost over. Don't make this harder." I backed away from the tree line, my breath quick and sharp, the frozen grass crunching under my boots. For the first time since the sighting started, I realized something terrifying. The woodsman wasn't watching me. He was waiting for me to leave. I kept backing up toward the building, never taking my eyes off the tree line. The footsteps stopped. The woods went silent, dead silent, as if every living thing inside had suddenly held its breath with me. Then the voice came again, not loud, not threatening, just steady, measured, directed right at me. "You don't belong out here." My hand fumbled for the security door. The metal handle felt colder than the air around me, like it had been sitting in a freezer. I yanked it open and slipped inside, slamming it shut. Instantly, the lights flickered, once, twice, and the hallway hummed with an electric buzz that didn't sound right. The building felt wrong, too, like something outside was pressing against the walls. I backed away from the door, and then 3 slow knocks. Not pounding, not aggressive, just waiting. Knock, knock, knock. My stomach clenched. I reached for the light switch and flipped it off, hiding myself in the dark. The only illumination came from the emergency exit sign down the hall, glowing a soft, bloody red. Another knock, this one softer. Then a whisper through the metal. "You know the rules?" I didn't. God, I didn't know anything. I barely got my breathing under control when my work phone buzzed in my pocket. A text alert from the morning supervisor. "Hey, we're running late. Don't leave until relief arrives." A chill went straight through me. I didn't request relief. I hadn't called anyone. I typed back with shaking hands. "Did someone else call in? Anyone on site?" The response came immediately. "No, just you. Why?" Another knock. This time, the metal door flexed inward, as if something heavy leaned against it. "Open it." I staggered back, nearly losing my footing. Then I realized something horrible. The woodsman had never once tried to approach me before. He only stood there. He only watched. But now he was trying to come inside. And for the first time since I started this job, I understood. He wasn't some lost figure wandering the woods. He wasn't a ghost or a man or an animal. He was something bound, restricted, something that could only act when certain rules were broken. Rules I had just broken by stepping into his spot. The metal on the security door groaned again, bending inward just slightly, like someone was pressing their forehead against it, or something larger. I backed down the hall, never turning around, afraid that if I broke eye contact with the door, it would explode inward. Another whisper seeped through the seams, sliding under the edges like cold air. You stood where I stand. My lungs froze. That had to be the rule, he mentioned. That spot in the tree line, the place he always appeared, unmoving, night after night. I had stood in it. I had crossed whatever invisible line kept him rooted there. And now he could move. My work phone buzzed again. Supervisor. Why did the cameras just go offline? My eyes snapped up to the corner of the hallway where the security camera hung. The little red recording light, a tiny comfort on long shifts, was dead. Every camera in the building blinked off at the same time. Something was inside. I typed back, "Someone's trying to get in. Call the police now." Before I hit send, the hallway lights shut off. Every single one. Darkness swallowed the building. I felt it before I heard it. The faintest shift of weight on the other side of the security door, then a long, dragging step inside the entry vestibule. He had gotten into the first set of doors. Only one thin metal barrier separated him from me now. My phone vibrated again and I almost dropped it. Supervisor, what are you talking about? Cameras show you're alone. I stared at the message, heart hammering so loud I could barely hear. They saw nothing on their end. Nothing approaching. Nothing knocking. Nothing entering. Just me. And then, a sound echoed from the far end of the hallway. Not footsteps, not breathing, not a voice. It was the sound of branches rubbing together. Dry, wooden, scraping inside the building. Slowly, painfully slow, those scraping sounds pushed deeper down the hall, as if something massive, was dragging its limbs along the walls. The emergency exit sign flickered red, then went out. I was submerged in pitch black. Then from the dark, "Return what you took." My voice cracked in a whisper. I didn't take anything. Silence. Then a low, warping groan swept through the hall, vibrating the air. "You took my place!" I clamped a hand over my mouth to stifle a cry, because now I finally understood what the woodsman wanted. He wasn't looking for an offering. He didn't want to hurt me. He wanted me to stand where he stood, to take his place, and he wanted to take mine. The scraping stopped, not slowly, not gradually. It just ceased, like whatever was making the sound had suddenly turned its attention fully toward me. I couldn't see anything in the blackness, but I could feel it. A shift in the air pressure. A presence stretching into the hallway, taller than the door frames, wider than the corridor. Its weight pressing against the dark like a hand on my chest. I backed away one trembling step at a time until my shoulder hit the cold metal of the break room door. Behind me, the little window of the door glowed faintly. Emergency battery lights deeper inside the room were still working. I reached behind, fumbling blindly, pushing the door open without taking my eyes off the hallway. The scraping started again. Faster this time, not dragging, approaching. I slipped into the break room and slammed the door shut, twisting the lock. It was useless. A little push could snap it, but it made me feel like I had done something. The emergency battery lights barely illuminated the room in a soft red glow. My breath fogged in front of me. It shouldn't have been that cold. A chill crept over my neck. The hairs stood straight up, reacting to something I hadn't yet heard. Then, a soft tap at the door. Not pounding, not forcing, just tapping. Fingernail against metal, tap, tap, tap. "Open it," the whisper came. Not from the hallway. From right behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my footing. Nothing was there, but the room was colder. The lights flickered. The shadows pooled unnaturally in the corners, as if they were thickening, rippling, forming into shapes. No, not shapes, branches. I stumbled backwards until I hit the counter, my hand slipping on its icy surface. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, and out of pure terror-driven instinct, I yanked it out and held it up like a weapon. A new text from my supervisor. Police are on their way. Stay where you are. And beneath it, a second message. One I didn't recognize. A number with no name. Unknown. You're in the wrong place. My throat tightened. Another message came instantly. Unknown. You should be outside. Then another. Unknown. Where I stand. I dropped the phone. On the far wall, the shadows had stopped moving. Instead, they stretched upward, slowly, inch by inch, until they formed the unmistakable outline of a figure. Long, tall, arms like twisted limbs, a head lost somewhere in the branching dark. A voice seeped out of the outline. Return to my place, and I will return to yours. My legs almost buckled. He wanted fairness. He wanted balance. I shook my head, choking out the words. I can't. If I go out there, you'll... The figure tilted its head unnaturally far, joints cracking like splitting bark. Then it spoke in a voice that smelled like soil and winter wind. The woods take only what is given. A pause. Choose. I could hear sirens faintly now, far off, getting closer, but not fast enough. Not nearly fast enough. The shadows pressed forward. The branches curled toward me. The air froze in my lungs. And I realized something with a sinking, hollow certainty. If I didn't go outside, he wouldn't wait another second to take me anyway. The shadows lunged. Not quickly, but with a slow, deliberate certainty, like they already knew the ending and were just letting me catch up to it. I slapped my hand against the break room door, twisted the lock, and threw myself back into the hallway. My flashlight, long dead, hung uselessly in my grip as I ran toward the exit, the emergency lights flickering red across the walls like a pulsing heartbeat. Behind me, the break room door creaked, not opening, bending. Something massive pressed against it from the inside. I sprinted. My breath tore at my chest. My boots thudded against the linoleum. The cold chased me like a second shadow. The exit sign above the back door glowed faintly. Thank God. Still visible. Still real. I slammed into the door, shoulder first. It burst outward, spraying snow into my face. The night outside was freezing, darker than it had any right to be. The trees stood silent at the edge of the parking lot, their silhouettes jagged against the faint sky glow. And there, exactly where he always stood, was that same empty patch between the pines. The spot I'd seen him in for weeks. The spot he wanted me to return to. My legs refused to go any farther. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I'm not stepping in there. I'm not... The wind shifted, and the trees moved. Not swayed, not rustled, moved. Branches unfolded like fingers. The black between the trunks swelled outward, and then with a sickening stretch, something stepped forward. Tall, lank, limbs bending the wrong way. A silhouette shaped like a man only if you squinted, and pretended men were built from roots and hunger. He stood exactly in the patch of darkness, exactly where I was supposed to be. A perfect trade. He raised one long, bark-like arm and pointed at me. Not threatening, beckoning. The cold deepened until the breath froze in my throat. Sirens wailed in the distance, loud now, close, but they didn't matter. Not to him, not to me, because he was crossing the parking lot. Step by deliberate step. Silent, impossible, terrifying. His shadow spilled across the snow like oil. I backed up until I hit the wall of the warehouse. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I could only watch as he stopped 10 feet away. The branches of his head angled down, studying me. evaluating me. Then he extended his hand, a single long limb reaching out. An offer, a demand. I shook my head violently, tears stinging my frozen cheeks. I don't belong to you, I rasped. The creature tilted its head, and the shadows beneath it shifted. A shape formed at its feet, a human shape, a familiar one, a man in a reflective vest, my supervisor. His face contorted in silent agony, half absorbed into the creature's darkness, as if caught mid-scream and unable to finish it. My stomach dropped. He wasn't just watching me from the woods, he was waiting for whoever I'd replace. I had stayed inside. My supervisor had come outside instead. The creature offered me one last chance, one last trade, one last step into the patch of darkness where he had stood for weeks. And in return, he would release the man he had taken. Behind the creature, my supervisor's fingers twitched helplessly. The monster's outstretched hand didn't waver. He wanted balance. He wanted me. I didn't move. Not because I was brave, but because every instinct in my body was screaming at me not to step forward, not to take that thing's hand, not to enter the space he'd marked as mine. The creature waited anyway. Patient, silent, as still as the trees behind it. My supervisor's half-absorbed body twitched again, as if trapped in tar. A muffled, wet sound gurgled from his throat, a sound that didn't belong to the living or the dead. My knees almost buckled. I'm sorry, I whispered to him, even though he couldn't hear me, even though it wouldn't help him, even though the guilt tore through me harder than the cold. The creature lowered its head. Its arm extended farther, impossibly far, that long, bark-like limb stretching until the tip hovered inches from my chest. A final warning, a demand for balance, a trade for what I'd taken. If I didn't choose, then it would choose for me. I slid sideways along the wall, inch by inch, keeping my back pressed against the freezing metal. The creature's head turned, following every tiny movement. I wasn't running toward the woods. I wasn't running toward the parking lot. I was moving toward the front of the building, toward the lights, toward other people, toward witnesses. But the creature understood, and it did not approve. The shadow around its feet surged outward, spilling across the snow like a living tide. It moved fast, faster than footsteps, faster than breath. I pushed off the wall and sprinted. My boots hammered the frozen ground. My breath shredded the air. The warehouse loomed beside me, its floodlights flickering as if even electricity feared what was chasing me. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I could feel it behind me. The icy pressure crawling up my spine, the unnatural cold biting at my heels. The front door of the building came into view. Just 20 feet. 15. 10. The shadow caught my ankle. It didn't yank. It pulled, slow and steady, like a tide dragging me back toward the dark sea behind it. I fell forward into the snow, the breath punched from my lungs. My nails scraped uselessly across the ice as the shadow tightened around my leg, dragging me backward, inch by inch. No, no, no! I kicked wildly, heels striking nothing, then everything. The darkness itself felt like gripping hands, dozens of them, all reaching, all claiming. Then, headlights, blinding, white, cutting straight through the night. A delivery truck rounded the corner, tires crunching the snow. The shadow recoiled like it had been burned. I gasped as the grip on my ankle snapped away, disappearing under the truck's sweeping beams. The creature retreated just beyond the light's reach. A towering silhouette crouched low, watching, calculating. The driver jumped out of the cab. Hey, you all right? He shouted, boots thudding toward me. Before I could answer, before I could even point, the creature stepped backward, melting seamlessly into the tree line. Gone. Not running, not hiding, just waiting, always waiting. The driver helped me to my feet. unaware of the thing that had nearly taken me. But I knew. And as I stared at the empty patch of forest where the creature had stood for weeks, the place it had claimed as mine, I felt a cold certainty settle in my chest. Wasn't finished. Not with my supervisor, not with me. Not with the balance I had disrupted. The woods behind my workplace were still watching. And one night, when the timing was right and the light was gone and I was alone again, the creature would return to complete the trade. The delivery driver walked me inside, still asking questions I couldn't answer. My mind was stuck outside, in the snow, in the shadows, in the place where the creature had almost dragged me away. Inside the break room, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. They felt too bright, too normal, too human. The driver handed me a bottle of water. "You sure you don't need a medic?" he asked. I just nodded. My mouth was too dry to speak. My heartbeat still hadn't slowed. When he finally left to unload his shipment, I sat alone, staring at the door, waiting for the lights to flicker or the shadows to stretch, waiting for something to announce that the creature had followed me inside. It didn't. The night ended quietly, almost peacefully, almost. But the nightmares started the next day. They weren't dramatic. They weren't cinematic. They were accurate. I dreamed of standing at my workstation, of the tree line, of the creature's silhouette, unmoving, patient, waiting for me to look up, waiting for me to acknowledge that I saw it. Every dream ended the same way, with the shadow at my feet, gripping my ankles, dragging me toward the woods. I woke up gasping every night. Every morning I told myself the same thing. You're not going back for the night shift. But I did, not because I wanted to, but because bills don't vanish just because something is stalking you. So I returned. Night after night, and every night I kept my eyes down. I never looked toward the woods, never tried to spot that silhouette again. If I didn't look, maybe it wouldn't appear. And for a while, it didn't. Until the following Thursday. A coworker, Dana, approached me during break. Her eyes were red. Her voice was shaking. "Did you hear?" she whispered. I shook my head. I already didn't like where this was going. "It's about Mark, the supervisor." I froze. "We found his badge," she said. "In the woods, like 50 feet in. Who goes in there?" She shuddered. "And his keys were hanging on a branch, like someone put them there." My stomach clenched. Not dropped. Not lost. Placed. "This place has been giving me the creeps," Dana continued. "Sometimes I swear I can hear someone walking out there." I swallowed hard. She leaned closer. "Have you noticed anything weird lately?" I lied. Because if I told her, if I admitted what I'd seen, I knew what would happen. She would look out the window. She would look toward the tree line. She would open herself to it. Just like I had. Just like Mark had. I couldn't do that to her. So I kept my mouth shut. That night was quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps in the snow. No silhouette in the trees. No flickering lights. For the first time in weeks, I almost allowed myself to breathe. But right before the end of my shift, I heard something soft, slow. Something tapping against the windows along the far wall. Tap, tap, tap. Like fingernails or something pretending to have fingernails. My blood turned to ice. I stepped toward the nearest window, but stopped myself just in time. I didn't look outside. I didn't give it what it wanted. But the tapping grew louder, more insistent, faster. "Tap, tap, 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 right behind me," a voice whispered. A familiar one. A broken one. "Trade." I ran. Didn't clock out. Didn't even shut off my station. I sprinted through the warehouse, through the break room, through the front doors, not stopping until I was in my car with the engine roaring. The woods were silent. The tree line was still, but I felt it even through the windshield. Its eyes on me, its patience thinning, its balance still broken. I drove home shaking. And the second I stepped into my apartment, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Just one sentence. You took my place in the light. I dropped the phone because that meant only one thing. It wasn't waiting outside my workplace anymore. It was waiting outside for me. If this story kept you watching, there's another real horror waiting for you. Click on the screen and don't watch it alone.